Happy Easter to you. It's always curious that the gospel writers put so much emphasis on the person of Mary Magdalene being the person who goes to the tomb. In some accounts, she's alone. In other accounts, she's with other women. But she was clearly a critical figure there. And she was the one that eventually Christ chose to go and tell the other apostles, Christ is risen. And what I'd like to do this morning is just kind of, in order to understand the resurrection, the big question that I think we always need to come to grips with is this. Okay, it's nice that there's a resurrection. I understand up here, the only reason I get to go to heaven is because of a resurrection. I get it. But in my day-to-day life, does it actually make a difference? Do I live a different kind of a life because of Easter? Does the Easter season change me? And we see that in the early church, it completely changed them. So I'd like to just let's put ourselves in the shoes of Mary of Magdala. So first of all, who was she? What we know from the Gospels is that she was a woman who supported Jesus. She must have had some money. She supported Jesus with her funds. And one of the Gospels says that 7 demons had been cast out of her. We don't know if that's figurative or literal. There's a tradition that says that she was living a sinful lifestyle. And I think it very likely. If she was a sinful woman who had been possessed by 7 demons and was an outcast from polite society, from religious society, and into her life comes this man who looks at her the way that nobody else has ever looked at her, a woman, or looked at her before, and frees her from possession by 7 demons and raises her up in dignity before the world so that she becomes one of his chosen followers. And he recognizes that this woman's love places her above so many of the quote-unquote respectable religious figures of the day. What would this person mean to her? And she witnessed him working miracles and curing people and casting out other demons and preaching and changing lives all over Israel. And all of a sudden, life stopped making sense because this person that her entire life had become centered around the person of Jesus. He had totally changed everything about her. And all of a sudden, she sees him get crucified. The crucifixion was not just any old death. It's not just even a brutal death. Crucifixion, there was a symbolism. There's a reason the scribes and Pharisees insisted on crucifixion, because it was thought to be a sign that you had been cursed and cast off by God. And that's what they wanted to show the rest of the world. This guy, Jesus, that everyone thinks is something great, he's been cursed by God. So the early church is wrestling with this. They see this saint, this prophet, the Messiah, working miracles, doing things no human being has ever done before, teaching the way that nobody has ever taught before, and all of a sudden, all of their worlds seem to come crashing down. And for somebody like Mary of Magdala, who had already lived in the depths of demonic possession and of a life of habitual mortal sin and of disrepute, to see the one person who brought me out of all of that and brought me freedom has been destroyed. What an incredible heartbreak and heartache she would have been living. And imagine in this situation, when she comes to the tomb to pay final respects, to suddenly discover it's true. Everything I had put my hopes in before, they are true. He has triumphed in a way that I didn't even know was Even over death, over the worst possible suffering, over the worst possible things that life can throw at you, Christ has triumphed. What would that mean to a person like Mary of Magdala in that moment? Because I think unless you and I have put ourselves in that situation, the resurrection is just not going to mean a lot to us. The resurrection has to change our lives. It has to change us. If you look at the Acts of the Apostles from this moment onward, all of the Acts of the Apostles is full of Peter and Paul and all of these guys saying, look, if Christ is risen from the dead, then everything has changed. Actually, the letter from, where's it go? We're going to find it right here. The letter from St. Paul to the Colossians. He says, if you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. And this is what St. Paul is saying. If you're raised with Christ, if you are baptized into the resurrection, then our lives can't be about seeking the ordinary stuff that we go about seeking in our day-to-day living, right? Seek the things that are above. How many of us, when we look at ourselves in the mirror, can honestly say, the majority of my heart, the majority of my energies, the majority of my preoccupations are the things of above, the things of God? How many of us worry more about things like being holy, doing God's will, living radical generosity, than I do about, what's for dinner, or what are the New York Giants doing, or whatever the particular, whatever my hobby horse is, or my work, or my job, or what school I'm going to get into, or whatever. How many of us really go through our lives worrying about God's will first? I think if we're honest with ourselves, and maybe this is just me, I'll just preach to myself here for a second, okay? If we're honest with ourselves, we probably go through life a lot of the times doing something like this. God, I really want to do your will as long as it's convenient to me. So let's try to find ways so that your will and my will align and will coexist, right? But, we've got to look out for number one here. So if your will is too inconvenient or annoying, I'm sorry. I still love you and everything, but I got to look out for number one. Okay, if we're honest, most of us do that. Okay, at least I do. Okay, I don't know about you. Maybe you guys are holier than me. Probably some of you are. If that's the way we go through life, you know what? You are doing it wrong. And that is really what Easter means. Easter means that we have been recreated. We are something new. We have been reoriented. The way that God made us in the beginning with Adam and Eve and all that, we were made in God, by God, for God. And Easter has restored that. And our lives are meant from this moment onward to be that kind of a life. In God, with God, for God. And then if I can kind of make, let Him take care of all the other stuff. Really. To simply seek God's will. So, that's the challenge. Anyway, I didn't mean to come out and be yelling at you and be all mean and grumpy and everything. So, happy Easter to all of you. It is a great day because you know what? Here's the bonus side. If you are actually willing to seek God's will, here's the promise. Not only do you get to go to heaven for all of eternity, which is not a bad deal. So, even if it meant living a miserable life right now, which it doesn't, even if it did, it would be a great investment because, frankly, heaven lasts forever. But it also means that your life down here, right here and now, will also be a lot happier. So, if you want to be happy, let's live Easter the way it's supposed to be lived. And that means looking for God's will no matter what. The Father, and Son, and Holy Spirit.